Good afternoon, everybody. Hope everyone had a good weekend. It was a beautiful weekend. Another nice weather day today. So happy to have you back here with us. A couple of subjects I want to update you on today, and then of course we're going to take your questions. The first, of course, is COVID. The second is, so it's also sort of COVID, it is an update on the spending from our CARES Act funds and other funds that have been available to us. I just want to give you a glimpse of where we are on that. So first with the COVID numbers, I'll just start by saying that for last week, of the 228 cases that were reported in the city, 54% of them, over half of them, were people in their 20s and 30s. 32% of people in their 20s, 22% people in their 30s. So that is a trend that is continuing. For yesterday, and looking back to Friday, so Saturday we had Saturday we had 47 cases. Sunday we had 33 new cases reported. Friday, which I don't think we had those at the time I spoke with you on Friday, there were 28. So 28, 47, 33. 2-day-old information on the hospital information. 260 people currently hospitalized, 70 of them in ICU, and 43 on ventilators. Now those are the numbers for the people who have confirmed COVID diagnosis. There are about 93 people, close to 100 people that are in the hospital with suspected COVID, but at that time test hadn't come back or they didn't know for sure. So these numbers are continuing to be higher than we want. Yesterday was 247, the day before 264, 258, 265. So you see that these numbers over the last week or so have gone between a high of about 274 down to as low as 247, but on average running right around 270. So not getting worse, not getting a lot better either, which is why the orders, the health orders that we have in place are really, we're just staying with those health orders. We do not want to be able to have even more strict orders in place. Those of you that are following this closely know that in Europe, there's a big discussion now, and the countries that are really being talked about are Great Britain, France, Spain, and Italy, who are all seeing a spike in their cases, who are all considering more severe measures. We are trying very hard not to need to do that. So please wear your mask. Don't forget about that hand washing. You know, that's a major thing. I think, you know, we're always talking about wearing a mask and staying 6 feet apart, which are critical, but the hand washing is also critical. Because as you touch other people or other things, you don't want to transfer that to your face. And if you're like me, it's almost impossible not to touch your face. That's one of the guidelines. Don't touch your face. But you know, you're wearing a mask, your nose itches, it's just a very hard thing to do, but try to be aware of that. So we're leaving our restrictions that we have right now in place. That includes the 11 p.m. closing time for bars and restaurants. I know that is a big struggle for a number of people, number of businesses, and for the employees who work at those businesses. But the St. Louis County has a 10 p.m. closing time. St. Clair County in Illinois has 11 p.m. closing time. We're all trying to stay in some sync here. So St. Louis City and St. Clair are 11 and St. Louis County is at 10. All trying to strike a somewhat reasonable balance to allow businesses to operate, folks to work, folks to go out and enjoy themselves, have dinner, hopefully outdoors if you possibly can, definitely socially distanced. And so we are continuing with that for the time being. I've received several emails saying, when are we going to be able to lift the 11 p.m. closing time and go back to as late as 3 p.m. for some businesses. But right now, that's not on the immediate horizon. We want to get there. We want to get everyone back to work. We want to get kids back to school. We want to get there, but we just are not in a position to do that right now, unfortunately. So that's those are the COVID numbers. Not a lot of change over the last few weeks. I guess if there's, on the positive side of this, numbers are getting a little bit better, and they're not getting worse. So, while more strict orders might help them go down, but we have to balance this impact and just try to continue to have the orders that we have right now. So that's all for the COVID numbers. I know there are some questions, and we'll take your questions. Remind me, we'll talk about Halloween. I bet somebody's going to ask me that. We'll talk about flu shots. So at any rate, happy to take your questions. Now let me talk for a minute about the additional funding and how we've spent the CARES Act money along with the Community Development Block Grant money, the Emergency Solutions Grant money, and FEMA money. So we have committed, either spent or committed, about $46 million so far. And let me give you a little idea of what that all goes into. First of all, just to back up, a reminder for maybe those that don't know, we got $35 million in CARES Act money that came to us via the state. That's about $116 per person in the city. If we would have been in St. Louis County, we would have gotten about $175 a person. So St. Louis County got 50% more than St. Louis City. The reason for that is because St. Louis County was able to get their funding directly from the federal government because they were a county of more than 500,000 people. Only 2 counties in Missouri were able to get it direct from the federal government. That's St. Louis County, Jackson County, where Kansas City is. So since we were not more than 500,000 people, the city's also a county, you know that. We got ours from the state, and we ended up getting about 50% less. So we got $35 million. We are still hoping to get additional funding from the state as this goes on. We basically spent or committed virtually all of that $35 million. We've got a little contingency that is being appropriated now. CARES Act money has to be spent by the end of this year, so we've got 3.5 months left to spend these funds, which I assure you we will spend all of that. So what have we spent this money on? We spent $1.5 million. This is not in any particular order, but we spent $1.5 million on early childhood education, child care. Do I have something on that? Do I have a? There was a report I saw this morning. I'm sorry, I don't have it here. That's okay. To a number of child care centers, because keeping daycare, child care centers in business and able to operate is so important to keeping adults, moms, dads, to be able to go back to work. So that $1.5 million has been spent and allocated. We actually work with the Missouri Foundation for Health, Mental Health Board on that, who helped us take applications and allocate those funds. We allocated $3 million to utility assistance. 1 million of it we've already spent. In the last 55 days, we've spent 1 million of the, and that was the CARES Act funding that we allocated to utility assistance through cool down and heat up. So how many people did that help? Families, 1,763 households had their utility situations resolved within 55 days. Remember, the Board of Aldermen didn't approve this funding until the middle of July. Don't recall the exact date. So from then until last week, it was 1,763 households who received money, payment to the utility companies to take care of their utility bills. And one of the pieces of information, which I think is pretty interesting, that we got from Cool Down Heat Up, is that impacted over 5,000 people, because more than one person in a household. So very key number of people that would have been affected if their utilities had been cut off. Fortunately, they were not, because we were able to intervene. So that's information on our utility assistance of $1 million already gone to help households directly by taking care of their utility bills. Big amount of money and I've talked about this a lot, to rental and mortgage assistance. So we have 17 agencies that are helping to process the thousands of applications for rental and mortgage assistance. So far, they have resolved over 300 folks who applied. Many more are in the pipeline here as they try to get in contact with the tenants, try to get in contact with the landlords, usually landlords, try to mediate the two and actually get the checks cut. So that program is really off the ground now, and those funds will be resolving many more weekly as more and more of those come, are able to be processed. So that was the initial $5.4 million that we allocated to mortgage and rental assistance. Since that time, we've allocated another $2.4 million. That is in process. So all of that continues, and these agencies are have a lot of applications in process. And then, and of course, there are many more things here to talk about, but these three I thought you would be especially interested in. So utilities, rental and mortgage assistance, and then our small business awards, grant awards, which was $5,000 per business that applied. Helped 750 businesses. Excuse me. And those businesses, we'll put a map up, because I know you're not going to be able to see this. Although I'm going to hold it up here to this camera. What this shows, these 750 businesses were all across the city of St. Louis. And one of the things that we are looking at is the possibility of expanding that program a bit. It's a balance here between trying to make sure people pay their utilities, can pay their rent, that homeless people have shelter to go to, emergency shelter, that we're able to do transitional housing for them, that we're able to buy PPE. So all of that, but we may, we've been thinking about the possibility. I think there are another couple hundred businesses that have applied, and to the extent we can, we may ask the Board of Aldermen to allocate some of the contingency money to those businesses. So, let me see if there's anything I missed on here. I'm sure there is. PPE, I mentioned that. That was a major amount of money. I think those are the main categories, and we are getting this funding out to the people and the businesses who need it just as fast as possible. So we're fortunate to have this level of funding, although of course we always want more, so that we're able to help more folks. So, questions?
A few questions, Mayor. We have quite a few questions from folks asking about the status of playgrounds in the city of St. Louis.
Well, we talked about that last Friday, and what our order originally said was that playgrounds should be closed, and we did close them diligently and taped them off for the summer, virtually the whole summer. We know that people are using the playgrounds anyway. We have almost 75 playgrounds in the city. I know St. Louis County, I heard on the radio this morning, they have 55 playgrounds. So in the city, much smaller area, we have almost 75 playgrounds. I think the exact number is 72. So we know that people are using the playgrounds. It's not something that Dr. Eccles, I just visited with him about this morning about this. It's not something that we think is a great idea. But we know parents have to make that decision. And so most of these playgrounds are not being taped off daily anymore. And what we suggest is that if you make the choice to have your kids play on the playgrounds, is that you might want to really consider making sure that you wipe down some of the bars maybe that they're hanging on, and just make sure that you've got hand sanitizer with you, and that you can, if you can't wash their hands immediately and their face, they lay on it. Anybody who's taken kids to the playground knows what that looks like. That you take the precautions for your own kids there. So it's up to you as parents if you want to do that at this point. Dr. Eccles still does not really recommend it. But with 72 playgrounds, we try to keep people off of them all summer, and so there's a bit of practicality that goes here as well. If you can get your kids to run around and then just in the park, that's probably more what Dr. Eccles would recommend.
So Heather's question has to do with what kind of support the city is offering for businesses who are dealing with some of the fallout from COVID-19 and the restrictions we've placed on businesses and their hours of operation.
So I'm not sure exactly where is that a question about bars that have to close at 11, or so as you know, the city did provide $5,000 grants to 750 businesses, and we may have some funds to provide more. But if you're talking about a large venue with 100 or 200 or 300 employees, and I know we have some of those, and I've heard from them who want to be able to stay open until 3 a.m., for example. You're probably scoffing a bit at the $5,000, but we believe that the White House coronavirus task force actually came to Missouri a couple of weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago by now, and recommended that bars be closed, period. That's pretty harsh, but we're talking about the numbers in Missouri. So we did not take that approach, because we know that bars and restaurants are almost always connected. And so we took the approach of an 11 p.m. closing time. We know that as the night wears on, there's less social distancing, there's more socializing, there's less mask wearing, and it really is a place where COVID can spread pretty rapidly. Maybe through someone who's symptomatic, maybe through someone who's asymptomatic. So frankly, I hate it that this restriction is in place, that it needs to be in place. But we are, as I mentioned at the top of this, the numbers have not changed much. And we don't want them to go back up, so we're sitting tight with the restrictions that we have right now.
Yuri's question, Mayor, has to do with, are there any updates on the voting places in the city of St. Louis for the upcoming election?
Yeah, Yuri. Let's see. You got it right there in front of you. So, hang on a minute. I'm going to read you the addresses. Here we go. So, actually, a piece of information on voting. Tomorrow, beginning tomorrow, anyone who wants to vote in person absentee downtown at the election board, that begins tomorrow. Now, on Monday, October the 12th, is that 3 weeks away? Yes, I guess that's 3 weeks from today. We will have 4 additional sites open. Booter Library on Hampton, 4401 Hampton. Central Library downtown, 1301 Olive. Julia Davis Library, 4415 Natural Bridge. And Schlafly Library, 225 North Euclid. Those are the 4 locations that will be have in-person absentee voting beginning 3 weeks from today and up until the Monday before the election, so for basically 3 weeks. And though the hours for that will be the same hours as the libraries are open. And these 4 locations that I just mentioned to you are on Monday, Tuesday, Friday, Saturday. They're open 11 to 5. On Wednesday and Thursday, they're open 1 to 7. So I think those are some pretty good options on hours for anybody who wants to do in-person absentee voting at off-site location. I will remind you that all of the off-site voting at these 4 libraries, all of it will be electronic voting. So not the paper ballot, but the touch screen ballot. And that's because there's many different combinations of ballots. And so when you go to a remote location, they can pull up your specific ballot based on where you live electronically, and then you'll have the right ballot there. So that starts then.
I'm supposed to remind you about Halloween.
Halloween, this is a question from last week, and we didn't have the final on that, but we're not canceling Halloween. Hopefully that got a couple of cheers from at least the kids. I talked with Dr. Eccles this morning, and he expects to have some orders out in about a week or 10 days. So by the 1st of October, you'll have a month's notice as to what guidance the health department is recommending for Halloween. It'll be some common sense things. It'll be, somebody specifically last week asked me about trunk or treat. And so what we talked about this morning is, well, if you're doing trunk or treat, then you might want to have the candy bags pre-packaged so that you can hand the bag to the child or the parent, whoever's there. Because you really don't want these kids reaching in a big bowl and, grabbing out the candy and then deciding they don't want that one and putting it back for the next kid to reach in the bowl and get. I mean, if you parents, that's how it goes. They take one and they'll, I don't like that kind. So anyway, some common sense things for Halloween that can be socially distanced and still allow kids to get some candy. But I think parents out there are going to have to think about that one as well. I know at my house in prior years, I might have 10 or 12 kids scrunched up on the porch all at once trying to get to the candy bowl. That scene is not something that you're going to want to happen. But we'll have some guidance out on what Dr. Eccles and his team think It would be some common sense things for Halloween. I bet most of you parents can think it up as well. I saw some fun stuff on Facebook or somewhere where somebody had a tube, kind of like a big tube maybe that you would, I don't know, have wrapping paper on or something, and they taped it to the railing and they sent the candy down that way. You guys will figure this out. We know that there'll be some Halloweening, but it's going to have to look a little bit different this year.
A few more questions, Mayor. We have a question wondering if your administration is aware of increased violence that's happened alongside COVID, and if more funding can be directed to officers so they can help with COVID mask mandates and have a presence in the city to lower violence.
Yeah, absolutely. We are. I'm aware. I think everyone's aware. We've had, as of this morning, we had 198 homicides in the city of St. Louis so far this year. That's way ahead. That's about a third more than we had last year at this time. It's extremely concerning. And I think the question said, is it related to COVID? Probably somewhat. It's related to folks that are under a lot of stress, under a lot of pain, very easy access to guns, possibly a lot of people who are no longer detained, that were detained before COVID. All of those things are related. I mean, I think this will be a period of time, unfortunately, that criminologists and social workers and mental health workers will be studying for quite a good time to try to assess the why and what the interventions are. So interventions, of course, have to do with police officers. Our officers are out there every day. And I don't know how many of you saw the article in the Post-Dispatch over the weekend. It was on an awfully serious subject, but a good article that really just looked at Baltimore, Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, St. Louis. I think there was one other city. And, you know, everybody's crime, violence is up. And, you know, what I said and what I continue to say is that everybody wants to talk about the numbers. I want to talk about the individual people who are killed, and their family members and their friends and their kids and their moms and dads. I mean, that's the real tragedy here, and that's a tremendous trauma for families and friends to go through, which it sometimes also leads to retaliation and, you know, leads to many other issues. So I will give you a quick update on Cure Violence. You know, Cure Violence, they were in my office last week for an update, and we have 3 areas in the city that have been designated Cure Violence areas: Hamilton Heights area, Dutchtown, and Walnut Park. And the 2 of the locations are being run by Employment Connections, and those are up and running. The 3rd location, which is about to get up and running, will be run by the Urban League, and that's in the Walnut Park area. And so that the Cure Violence individuals from Chicago were here in town, along with the directors of those 2 agencies, Employment Connection and the Urban League, to really update. Everybody's hiring. They're at 3 different stages, but they are going. So that is, you know, it's a very serious violence issue. What was the latter part of that question? I feel like I'm forgetting part of it.
If more funding can go to have more police of presence in the city.
Yes, so more funding for police is something that I'm always looking for, because it helps us recruit police and it helps us retain police. Right now, the city is facing a very serious financial crisis. We are expecting our revenue this year to be down by about $70 million. We are still hiring for police officers. Most of our positions in the city, not all, but most of them do have a hiring freeze on. but police officers, of course, do not. So we do have the funding available for that. Our pay for police officers is not as high as it needs to be competitive with some of the other departments, particularly St. Louis County. That's something that we can't solve right now, but we certainly are looking to solve that when our economy comes back a bit. The other thing, I'm sure you may have heard about this on the news, is that we're expecting on Wednesday of this week, day after tomorrow, that the governor will sign the bill which lifts the residency requirement for police, fire, EMS, public safety officers. And we think that'll be helpful because St. Louis County can hire from people who live in the city, but the city cannot hire from people who live in St. Louis County. So this, lifting this residency requirement for current officers and for officers that are hired for the next 3 years, and lifting the requirement forever if you're on board with St. Louis Police Department or Fire Department within the next 3 years, we think will attract some folks and help us retain employees.
Last two questions, Mayor, because it is 2:37. Quite a few comments of support of roads that have been temporarily closed in Tower Grove, Forest Park, all of our big parks. How does someone in a neighborhood park get roads closed? Is that even an option?
Yeah, it might be an option. Most neighborhood parks don't have roads in them. So right now I'm thinking of the big parks, and I'm not thinking of a neighborhood park that has a road in it. But, you know, send us a note. You're on Facebook right now. Tell us what park you're interested in. We'll take a look at it.
And then last question, Mayor, what are some of the metrics that the city's looking at when we can begin to talk about lifting the 11 p.m. and capacity restrictions on bars, restaurants, and businesses?
So I think we've had that question about 3 times today, and I've got lots of emails on it. The number of new cases and the number of hospitalizations will have to go down significantly, and that means in the region. And St. Louis County, St. Clair County, and the city of St. Louis are all committed to trying to work together on that, so that right now it's a pretty level playing field. If the city were to lift our requirement and go back to 3 a.m., well, you'd have people from St. Louis County and maybe Illinois and other places, you know, jamming into the city. That's not something we want. We're also not trying to give St. Louis County a competitive advantage over St. Clair or St. Louis City. So I know everybody wants to know when that's going to be lifted. I want to know that also. Right now, with Missouri is a red state. We've got the White House Pandemic Task Force recommending that we close bars entirely. And we've got 10 o'clock in St. Louis County, so it's not going to be lifted right now. I'm really sorry to say. I want to lift all of these orders as soon as possible. I want kids to go back to school. I want everybody to be able to go back to work. I think we all want that. And so for the time being, all those measures are going to be in place. And I know you want to know when, under exactly what numbers. Those are, you know, our numbers would have to go down significantly in the region for that to be lifted.
That's it for today, Mayor.
Thanks all. Appreciate you all being with us. We'll be back and talk to you in a couple of days. Thanks.